I will turn my volume up. I will turn y'all's volume up. And wah. Alright. Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussion. And we are going to be doing a conversion this time. Specifically, a conversion of the song Hot Child in the City by, let me make sure I get this right, Nick Gilder. Gilder. There we go. I didn't get it right. I had it and I didn't get it right. All right. It's Nick Gilder. We are going to be doing that song, going through it, and looking at it and seeing if we can find some inspiration for our character. But first, a disclaimer. This isn't well, I'm not sure with this particular group, but we're going to say it anyway, just in case. This is probably an adult podcast that may have some adult language. So you have been preemptively warned. So, there we go. I say that because I don't curse, but I'm not sure about Jason and Levi when they get particularly agitated. So far they have been behaving well, though, on the shows. So
I am actually more likely to just stop talking if I get agitated, and I more use cursing to seem chill and friendly with other people who do so they don't feel like they have to stop around me.
Oh.
And I'm not much for that sort of language. All I can say is the last time I said something like that was trying to fall out of the sky in a very large airplane.
A long time ago, in a lifetime far, far away. So, all that said, this is probably going to be fairly family-friendly as far as language. So there we go. For further announcements, we have going on our Misadventures game is going to be starting back up. We have already recorded Session 0, and Adonijah has made his character a changeling named Caesar. So if you want to know how that turned out for him and where he put all of his 40 points for creation and stuff like that, you can watch the Session 0 coming up soon. Maybe before this is even out. Who knows? I know, but anyway, that's that. We're coming up on 500 subscribers, so that means that we're going to be doing a giveaway of some kind. It's a bit of a milestone for a channel on YouTube to get 500, because you can do a lot more things with YouTube once you get 500 subscribers, at least if they haven't changed it any. And we also got our official web address. So if you actually go to YouTube/C/Inn of Planar Crossroads, you will actually get our channel. So there we go. Instead of all that gobbledygook stuff that they had you put at the end of the youtube.com stuff. So there, that's good. That's good. The last thing to announce is that we're going to be giving away this at the end of February, which is the Rick and Morty Splat Book for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So if you play D&D 5e, there you go. It's going to be given away to patrons, and so patrons on both Patreon and Subscribestar, whichever one you choose to use. And we're going to give it away at the end of, not February. Did I say February?
I think you said February.
I think I said February. We're going to be giving it away at the end of April. What happened in the Rise of the Rune Lords game? They're in the February of Pathfinder. That's what it is. Okay, give me some slack. Anyway, that's going to happen at the end of April, and we're going to give that away. Gives people plenty of time to become a patron if they want to. We should hit 500 by then, so we're probably going to get another giveaway, maybe. But all that said, that's the end of the announcements that I have. As far as I know, Tommy didn't have any announcements before he left. So, yeah, I think we're good. All right, guys. You ready to get into this one?
Indeed I am.
Good to go.
All right. So we're looking at Hot Child in the City And this is, again, by Nick Gilder. And you can kind of hear it playing in the background. We're going to be talking over it. Hopefully it doesn't get flagged, but if it does, we're supported by viewers like you anyway, and not YouTube ad. So, Hot Child in the City. What do you guys, which one of you guys wants to go first? No volunteers.
I mean, like, I definitely have some ways that it initially speaks to me when I read through the lyrics and when I listen to it. So I can, if you don't want to, Jason.
Go for it.
Alright.
Cool. I was also mildly worried that I was also going to mess you up for Josh, because your name has been messed for that so often. Cool. I'm just glad I didn't mess up, is all.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
Okay, good. Alright, so you go through this, there's the whole danger in the shape of something wild. It talks about there's this beautiful woman who has this dangerous edge to her, but like, that there's something beneath that beauty is a vibe I get when I'm reading through most of this. I'm imagining somewhere in a more city area, a bit of an adventure where there's been a spree of murders. And as you're going through and you're investigating, you find out that most of the people, well, the people who have been murdered have all went out with her. Not everyone she goes out with dies. So, like, you're not 100% sure if it's her, but you start trailing down. And I'm imagining her as a shape-shifting, like, either a changeling or something that changes form more drastically. And it's sort of an investigation adventure that I'm envisioning as I listen to this.
Okay. I can totally see that.
The first thing that comes to my mind is it's to me, it also would be a city-based adventure, but it might be the other side because, you know, the girl they're talking about, to me, seems like probably would have come into town into the city from a small town, a bit naive about things, and the urban predators just start to circle. You know, either that's a good place for the player characters to come in and save her, or maybe, you know, Daddy back on the farm knows one of these nice adventurers and says, you know, my daughter ran off to the big city, and they have to find her and get her out of whatever badness she's hooked up with.
Okay. I think that could also work. So, okay, so that's what you guys got?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I heard this song years ago, I've heard it more than once on the radio, but one of the times I was listening to it on the radio, I kind of started into tabletop. It's been a little bit when I did, and I was like, I had gotten into like reading about the Ifrits and the other genie kin and stuff like that, and I was like, ooh, that sounds like an Ifrit. And the Ifrit is the hot child in the city. For me, what I get from this one is you have an Ifrit, and I'm using it more not necessarily as a hook, but as a character background or something like that. So you have this background for this character. She's an Ifrit. She's danger in the shape of something wild, because that's what Ifrits are, really wild, and their shape is fire. It's destructive and things like that. It's got to be worked to controlled and something like and things along those lines. And she's a stranger in town now, but part of the song goes back to her being this first portion of the song, danger in the shape of something wild, stranger dressed in black, she's hungry child. No one knows who she is or what her name is, and I don't know where she came from or what her game is. So this is like the present tense of what's happening, either with the NPC that she is, or if she's a PC. And that's how people perceive her, as something wild and strange. And I think it's somewhere in here it talks about her being young, too young to be on, or too young to be out, or where is it? Run a while till it comes down. She's
so young to be loose on her own.
There it is, yeah. So young to be loose on her own. I feel like this could be something both from her past and her present. She's a young adventurer. Perhaps she's just hit the age of being an adventurer. And part of her, she's drawn to the city because she comes from the city of brass on the plane of fire. And there she was a slave, or some other thing like that, that put her in bondage of some kind, or under somebody's thumb, because everybody's under somebody's thumb in the city of brass. But she got away from that, and she was too young there to have that happen to her. It was unfair for her to have that happen to her there in her youth. And even now, as she's come out, she has these unfair views of her as something wild and uncontrolled, even though she kind of fulfills that in her attitude sometimes. And it's one of those things where there's development available for the character that this is coming from. So that so young to be loose on her own can imply lots of things for that background and her youth. And the young boys that want to take her home, well, she's geniekin. Ifrits are usually pretty attractive. Any of the geniekin are usually pretty attractive if they're females. If they're males, they're usually really ugly. But that's if you look at classic genies. So it's not uncommon for that type of attraction from the opposite gender for her. And she can use that to her advantage, especially being an Ifrit. They have good charisma. They've got that, if you're going with Pathfinder rules. They've got that going for them. And even at her young age, she's able to set herself up. If you're using this as an NPC, she sets herself up as controlling a certain part of the town. She's so young to be on her own, and everybody wants to have a part of that's in that underbelly of the city. But she has set herself up as something to be rivaled. And she's not necessarily, you don't have to necessarily play her as a bad guy, but she's not a good guy either. She's her own kind of mix of gray to be able to run things in the city. Maybe she's got her own nightclub or something like that, or a dive down in the other area that she worked for and scraped for. And that's another reason she might be wild, is she couldn't be predicted by her compatriots in that particular field. So that's how I see it with this particular one. And I agree that it should be very much an urban style campaign with this being the case.
I was looking up, and one thing that clicks to my mind is an Aasimar subtype, the Perry-blooded Emberkin, which, yes, I know it's a little bit literal for hot child in the city.
Well, I mean, the Ifrit is too, so I can't fault you for that one.
But the catch is they feel the dual pull, because they have the Perry angel forebearer, and they also have a fallen angel back in their bloodline. So there's always kind of a pull between the two sides. And I'll read it off of the SRD. Like all Aasimars, Emberkin are not necessarily compelled to embrace good and justice. Perhaps more than most of their celestial kin, Emberkin have a propensity to revolt against their benevolent now I can't talk. Benevolent predisposition, and instead follow a darker path. Okay, now that it's proved I cannot talk, this is, you have a very good setup for there to be a duality, a two-person, a, for like a vigilante where there's a persona and, the superhero's day job.
Oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense for if you use the Perry Blooded and this particular song as inspiration. That would make a lot of sense for that, especially if you go with something like Orphan or something like that, where she didn't have a lot of role models to show her appropriate ways to behave, which does fit in with this particular song. Then her being on her own could imply that. That may be what that line implies, that she's orphaned, she's become a vigilante not because she wanted to, but because she kind of had to survive. And she's got this persona she has in the daytime, but that nighttime persona is something different. Or vice versa, however you want to, whether you want her to be blatant about her good guy stuff or not blatant about it, or whether you want her to be a good guy at all, because technically vigilante styled characters, at least in Pathfinder, the vigilante class can go good or evil. There's no alignment restrictions. So, yeah.
It also works with a runaway type character plan as well. And, just quick riff off of, that young girl runs away from home because she's very confused because she's growing into her Aasimar traits. Runs away from home being rebellious, gets snatched up by, like I said, urban predators, and eventually, either gets away from them or decides to start hunting them down.
Oh, yeah. I could very easily see an ex-child slave or an ex-child something being very vigilante about their justice with that. And it would really fit in with her, because it talks about her being kind of dangerous and she's running wild. Well, in the daytime she may not be, but in the nighttime, when that hot-blooded Perry in her wants that vengeance for what was done to her or her friends or whatever. Yeah, I could definitely see that working well. Because Aasimars fetch a hefty price in the slave trade of fantasy race trade and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And, they get a bump to charisma, so they more than most are likely to be very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, Levi, you got anything else you want to say about it?
I do, in that with either of these paths for this likely sorceress, somewhat magical woman, I felt even with the Ifrit, like, that magical vibe still very much felt like fit with it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the point being that, like, you could have two people come in and use this as a song for the inspiration for both of their characters, because there's this relatively not focused on, so I'm just, for the sake of that, going to assume relatively normal guy who also wants to pursue her. And I'm imagining, like, there's this person with the troubled past and whatnot, and then there's this uplifting, good-spirited person that they travel with to keep them towards a better path. So kind of what happens is throughout... I'm going to go with the Perry side more on this, like the Perry Aasimar, because that fit more with where I was thinking. But, like, I'm imagining her vigilante side is much more a dark vigilante going down and out and hunting. And while she's socializing, this other character is bringing a much more level-headed and optimistic perspective about the world, and is kind of a balancing act from her tipping completely over into evil. So, like, you could have two players come in with that sort of dynamic between them, both being more or less inspired by this song.
Yeah, you could. You could run that way. I think it's good to also point out that if you're wanting to make this an NPC, a really good class for making this more of an NPC build versus a character inspiration for a player, because sometimes those are different, is the Wishcrafter Ifrit class. It's got that special thing where it can do wishes. Well, how valuable would that be? How in demand would that be for this little Ifrit child? And if you want to go really into it, you could say that the PCs catch wind of this Ifrit child that's granting wishes. And the wishes are wishes, especially from genies. They turn out different than is usually intended. And if you have that, then that's it's not like the child's trying to hurt anybody. But if slavers caught wind of the idea of a wish-granting Ifrit that doesn't, like, it's an Ifrit spawn, it's not even a full Ifrit, so you don't have to worry about all the genie problems. It's just a child. You can grab it easy. If they caught wind of that thing would be in demand real heavy, and you could play it up where the PCs have to either rescue or grab that thing, depending on their alignment, and either take control of it or keep it safe, or however you want to do that. And if you're doing it for an NPC and you want it to later influence another thing, you could have it not only be rescued or captured, however it ends up, by the PCs, but later on in the chronology of your story, somehow there's this young child, this person who has risen up in the underbelly, or perhaps not in the underbelly, in the kind of normal social status, depending on how it went with the child in the first scenario, that is very young, but she has gained much influence in either this good circle or bad circle. And she's a Ifrit, wish master. And using that, because I like to use classes that are not super awesome mechanically in PC builds, because they're so much more flavorful than a lot of the ones that are just mechanically good. So that's another option for this one.
Another one, I have to admit, you could look at the girl as the predator. So maybe a vampire or some sort of tiefling, maybe succubus, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So, yes, everyone wants to be with her, but that's how she hunts for food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any of those work. All right, so we are coming up on about 25 minutes, 23 minutes. So, any final thoughts on this one?
Was trying to remember when I heard this song first, but not sure I want to mention the decade.
It's okay. We understand. What about you, Levi? Any last thoughts?
Nothing of note.
All right.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Okie dokie. Well, my last thought for everyone is that I hope you remember that this content and all the content you see on the Inn of Planar Crossroads has been brought to you by subscribers and viewers and travelers like you. Thank you. Bye.
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 This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.